this lesson, we're taking a look at pattern 1 of the minor pentatonic scale. Now this is going to be an in-depth look, so we're going to cover the scale shape, we're going to do the intervals in the scale, including the locations of the root notes. I'm also going to talk about the finger options, good opportunities for string bends, and at the end of the lesson we're going to learn a lick so you can instantly get started turning it into music. This lesson is part of my minor pentatonic scale series, which you can find a link to in the description. I went over a bunch of the theory and terminology in the first lesson, so do check that out if you haven't already. You'll also find a link to my Patreon page where you can download related resources such as guitar tabs, diagrams, and backing tracks to help you practice the stuff that we're doing in these lessons. But right now it's time to take a look at the practical side and dive into pattern 1. So this is one of the most finger-friendly shapes that you're likely to find. Most players find it really comfortable, and often it can feel like a bit of a safe space to fall back on when you're improvising, but that being said, there's still plenty that you can do with it. Now the first finger is going to play the root note on the bottom string, and we're going to learn the scale in the key of A, so we're going to end up with an A minor pentatonic scale. So the note A on the bottom string is the 5th fret, so we're going to start on the 5th fret with the first finger. Following this, we're going to use the little finger to play 3 frets higher, so up on the 8th fret. Then moving on to the A string, we're going to use first finger on the 5th fret again, followed by third finger 2 frets higher on the 7th fret. Then on D string, it's the same, so first finger playing 5th fret, third finger playing 7th fret. And then again on G, exactly the same, first finger plays the 5th fret, third finger plays the 7th fret. So from the A string, we've actually got 3 strings in a row where we're playing 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, all with first and third fingers. Then moving on to the B string, we've got first finger playing the 5th fret again, but now we're going to bring little finger back to play 3 frets higher on the 8th fret. And then on the top string, exactly the same, so first finger's playing the 5th fret once more. So you might notice in this scale, first finger plays the 5th fret on every string, so that makes it nice and easy to remember. And then to finish off, we've got little finger playing that 3 frets higher on the 8th fret there. And that would be the top of the scale. So if we go from the very bottom, we're going first, third, start again. First, little, then first, third, first, third, first, third, first, little, first, little. And if I give you the fret numbers, it's going to be 5, 8, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 8, 5, 8. And then you should also practice descending the scale just to help build that familiarization. So we're going to be going 8, 5, 8, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 8, 5. And that's our minor pentatonic ascending and descending scale in the key of A. Next, we're going to take a look at the root locations and the intervals in this scale. The roots are particularly important to know because they're often the point of resolution in your licks and lead parts, and also tend to be the reference points to help you find different scales in different keys when navigating the fretboard. So we've already talked about the easiest root note of the lot, which is the first finger playing the 5th fret on the bottom string. This is in the key of A. You should know that the 5th fret of the bottom string is an A note from things like power chords and bar chords if you've had a look at them. If you're unfamiliar, I have done a lesson on notes on the neck, so I'll pop that in the video cards. But that is the first root note of the scale, just the very bottom note. I mentioned in the notes on the neck lesson that you can find an octave shape by moving along 2 frets and up 2 strings, so we can use that to find the next root note in this key. So we've got first finger on the 5th fret on the low E to start with, that's our lowest root note. And then for the next one, we're going to move up 2 frets to the 7th fret and then up 2 strings to the D string. So that 7th fret D string is the next A note. So it's the next root note in our scale, and remember that a pentatonic scale has 5 notes in, just like a pentagon has 5 sides. So if we count up the 5 notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the next note would be the start of the next octave, which is that 7th fret on the D string. Now, a lot of scale shapes only have 2 root notes in them, but this one actually has 3, and the reason why you can easily remember the 3rd one is because whatever note we play on the bottom string, remember the bottom string is an E string, is also the same note as the top string, because that is also an E string. So if we have a root note down here on 5th fret low E, we also have to have a root note up here on 5th fret high E, so that would be the next root note. So the 3 root note locations to learn in this scale are the 5th fret on the bottom string, the 7th fret on the D string, and then the 5th fret again on the top string. They're all the note A. So be sure to internalize the root notes as part of the learning process for this scale, and then the next step would be to learn the other intervals involved as well. So I went over what the intervals are in the first lesson in the series, so do check that out if you're unfamiliar. But if you know your intervals, we'll take a look at them. So we've got that root note on the bottom, followed by a minor third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, minor seventh, and then into the next octave we've got root note, minor third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, minor seventh, root note, and then an extra little minor third on top. Because you don't always have to end on a root note, you want to just fit in as many notes from the scale as you can in each pattern. Now we're going to talk about the finger options for this scale. Now it's important to be versatile with regards to finger options because that is going to enable you to play a wider variety of licks and melodies. If you just use the same fingers on each note all the time, you're just going to be creating limitations for yourself. So I'll give you a quick example. If I'm starting with my 3rd finger, playing the 8th fret on the B string, I'm unlikely to want to jump that finger straight to the 7th fret on the G. Say if I had a little 3-note melody that went like this, I'm far better off going 3rd finger, 2nd finger, 1st finger. Because I'm using different fingers on each note, I can get it moving a lot smoother. So if we take a look at the options starting from the top of the scale, the first decision you have to make is whether you use the little finger or the 3rd finger on the 8th fret of the top 2 strings, because I can either play with the little finger like this, or I can angle the hand and use the 3rd finger like this. Now the little finger option I tend to refer to as classical style because it's got a very straight hand and it's kind of perpendicular to the neck, and that lines the fingers up 1 per fret. So that would be the first option. However, with the blues style, you want a much bigger angle in the hand, thumbs generally wrapped over pointing one way and then fingers are pointing the other way, and that just helps separate the 1st and 3rd finger so you can get that 3 fret gap. So this would be more like a blues style, and this is beneficial for trying to get bends in because it lines the 3rd finger up with the bendy notes. But I'm going to have a talk about the bends in a second. So those are the options for the top 2 strings. Now the next option that you might want to make is whether you play with the 2nd finger or 3rd finger on the 7th fret of the G string. This is the example that I showed before, and you've just got to kind of go with whatever the particular lick that you're playing calls for at the time. You'll do some licks where you'll get these notes where it makes more sense to use 2nd finger, but if you're descending the scale, normally you'll bring the 3rd finger in so that the stuff below that is more comfortable. And actually I also just want to talk about the root note, which is the 7th fret on the D string. Sometimes, say if I have a little finishing phrase where I'm going 5th fret to 7th fret on the G, sometimes I'll roll the 3rd finger to finish on the root note, but other times I'll actually bring in the 2nd finger and play that root note with 2nd finger instead. Again, just go with your preference. The notes on the bottom strings are probably going to stay pretty consistent, so you're likely to use 3rd finger and 1st finger on the A string, and then little finger and 1st finger on the bottom string just to help with that stretch, especially when you've got your hand wrapped all the way around the neck. However, if you're playing in higher keys, for example, if I'm playing in the key of E, up here on the 12th fret, sometimes you'll use the 3rd finger for all the notes because the frets are a little bit closer together, so this kind of thing. That can definitely help for a bit of speed and efficiency if you're playing stuff higher up the neck. But again, you just got to experiment with the options, see which options you want to set as your kind of default fingers, but then remember to stay open-minded so you don't create limitations for yourself and you can play a wider variety of stuff. Now it's time to take a look at the string bends in pattern 1. This is also really convenient and friendly for guitar players. I feel like I'm talking a lot about how convenient this pattern is, but it really is true, and honestly it's no surprise that guitar players like to spend a lot of time in this pattern, and I suppose it's there to be used, so why wouldn't you? I suppose the danger is just that you get stuck in pattern 1 forever, so in the long run do make sure that you are incorporating the other patterns. But yeah, there's lots of useful stuff in pattern 1, so definitely make use of it. So if we take a look at these nice convenient bends, they're all tone bends on the highest pitch note on the top 3 strings in the scale. So that would be 8th fret on the top string in this key, we're going to bend up a tone. 8th fret also on the B string, and then remember it's 7th fret on G. So you're probably going to be using 3rd finger most of the time, and as I say, they're all tone bends, so you're aiming for the note 2 frets higher. And they're all really easy to incorporate into licks. Sometimes some licks, as you'll see in the next section, require 2nd finger to do the bend on the G string, which can be a little bit of a push, but still doable as well, so that ties into the finger options element. But yeah, they all sound really good and pretty easy to incorporate into licks, so definitely get some string bends in there. And finally, it's time to take a look at a lick in pattern 1. Now I'm always going to base the demo at the start of these lessons around the lick that I teach towards the end. So you'll have heard this one at the start, it sounds like this. And this is a great lick for starting a phrase or solo. It's definitely a little bit of a go-to kind of pet lick for me, but really useful. We're going to start with that tone bend on the G string, and you can either use 3rd finger or 2nd finger. I think most of the time I tend to use 2nd finger for this one. Following this, we're going to use 1st finger to play the 5th fret on the B string, and then we're going to roll the 1st finger onto the 5th fret high E. So with the 3rd finger bend, or with the 2nd finger bend. And then to finish off, we're going to use 3rd finger, bending the 8th fret on the B string. And we're actually bending up to the root note there, so it's a nice place to finish the lick. Timing wise, it feels pretty good to start this lick on the and of beat 3, and that means that you end up resolving on the root note on beat 1 of the next bar. So that would go like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. Again. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. And it also works pretty well in a swung context as well. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I've got a bunch of backing tracks on my Patreon page just titled Groove in A, which are designed specifically for practicing the licks in these lessons. So go and check those out if you're interested. There's straight versions and swung versions, and there's also a few different BPMs, so you can practice at different tempos and with a different feel. So they're great for just experimenting with licks and trying to create your own melodies and your own ideas. So I hope that's helped you get started with the first pattern of the minor pentatonic. As I mentioned in the previous video, it's a really bad idea to try and learn all the patterns at once. So even though this is YouTube and I should be trying to convince you to go straight into the next video, for your own benefit, spend a couple of weeks solely just focusing on this pattern and only move on when it's comfortable and familiar. In that time, however, do head over to my channel to learn some fun songs, some of which will definitely use this pattern. Be sure to subscribe if you enjoy the lessons, and if you found this one helpful, I'd appreciate you giving the video a like as well. Remember also that you can access the Minor Pentatonic Scale series and my Patreon page via the link in the description, and I'll see you in the next lesson.